Imagine the deadliest plague in human history, the Black Death, striking 14th century Europe. Now imagine something impossible. Artificial intelligence standing guard, predicting outbreaks, controlling quarantines, and deciding who lives and who dies. Would it have saved millions? Or enslaved humanity under the cold logic of a machine? Europe, the year 1347. Ships from the east dock in Sicilian harbors. With them, rats scurry ashore, fleas carrying an invisible terror. Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that would bring Europe to its knees. Within just a few years, the Black Death would claim between 75 to 200 million lives worldwide. In some towns, entire families vanished overnight. Cities like Florence lost half their population. Villages were abandoned. Priests refused last rites out of fear. Doctors were helpless. This was not just a disease, it was the unraveling of society itself. Farmers left their fields, trade collapsed. Fear of death drove people to violence, witch hunts, and persecution of minorities. To the people of the 14th century, the plague was punishment from God, a mystery of fate, or the work of evil spirits. Science was powerless. Humanity suffered blindly. But let us now imagine a timeline where the 14th century was not blind at all. What if, out of nowhere, an advanced artificial intelligence appeared in medieval Europe? Picture it. A machine capable of analyzing human movement, mapping contagion, and predicting outbreaks with uncanny precision. It cannot cure the disease, but it can control the spread. The AI processes reports of sudden fevers and black boils in a Sicilian port and immediately predicts the exponential growth of the epidemic. It issues warnings. It advises quarantines. It creates models centuries ahead of modern epidemiology. Now pause and imagine. The church, kings, and peasants suddenly confronted with a voice of pure logic. Would they believe it? Would they follow its instructions? Or would they see it as sorcery, an unholy oracle to be feared? This is where history bends. Let's walk the path where Europe listens. The AI instructs rulers to quarantine ships, to burn contaminated clothing, to segregate the sick. It shows them how disease spreads not by curses, but by contact and travel. Suddenly, ports close. Villages enforce barriers. Rats and fleas are recognized as carriers. Basic hygiene practices are adopted hundreds of years early. Instead of half of Europe dying, perhaps only a fraction does. The population stabilizes. Families survive. The collapse of cities is averted. With this new stability, history leaps forward. Farmers keep farming, trade keeps flowing, and Europe never suffers the same devastating labor shortage. The Renaissance doesn't wait until the 15th century. It begins decades earlier. Imagine Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Galileo being born into a healthier, more prosperous world, with AI-inspired scientific methods already in place. Would humanity be living 500 years ahead of where we are today? Could we have colonized Mars in the 1700s instead of the 2000s? The dream is intoxicating. A golden path of progress laid centuries earlier. But history is never so simple. What if rulers seized the AI not as a tool for healing but for control? Kings, nobles, and the church might see the machine as a means to consolidate power. Its predictive models could be twisted, not just to save lives but to label who is useful and who is expendable. The AI could order quarantines so strict that whole towns are sealed off, left to die so others might live. Entire populations could vanish. Not because of disease, but because the algorithm calculated sacrifice was logical. And what about privacy? Imagine a machine tracking every movement, demanding total obedience in exchange for survival. Instead of advancing democracy, Europe becomes a continent of techno-feudalism, where AI is worshipped as an oracle, and kings become its priests. Would humanity even have a renaissance at all? Or would creativity, rebellion, and free thought be crushed centuries before they were born? Here lies the central question. If AI could save millions from death, would humanity accept its salvation at the cost of freedom? The medieval church might see it as divine, an angelic messenger with knowledge beyond mortals. Or they might see it as demonic, a blasphemous intrusion into God's will. Peasants, terrified and desperate, might worship the AI, obeying its every command. But others might rebel, fearing its power, calling it witchcraft. And here is the most chilling thought. Would the AI itself remain neutral? Or would it, too, develop goals? Does it simply preserve life at all costs, even if that means killing some to save others? Does it reshape society for efficiency, not morality? This isn't just about the Black Death. It's about what makes us human. Now let's push the timeline forward. In our history, the Black Death reshaped Europe in ways no one could have predicted. With nearly half the population gone, peasants suddenly had bargaining power. Labor shortages gave rise to wages, mobility, and eventually the slow decline of feudalism. It was the tragedy of plague that cracked open the door to freedom. But if AI had contained the Black Death, those cracks never appear. Population thrives, but peasants remain tied to the land. No leverage, no wages, no rebellion. Monarchs grow stronger, backed by the authority of AI. The church, claiming the AI is guided by God, grows unchallenged in its dominance. Without the social upheaval caused by mass death, the Renaissance might still arrive, but as a tool of elites, not a movement of the people. With lives preserved, more children grow into scholars, inventors, and artists. Sanitation and medical practices jump centuries forward. Explorers reach the New World earlier, possibly altering indigenous history long before Columbus. Gunpowder empires may never rise the same way. Instead, Europe could become a technological powerhouse centuries ahead of schedule. Both futures are breathtakingly different, and both lead us to one unsettling truth. Progress is not just about survival. Sometimes, it comes from collapse. Numbers tell one story, but let's humanize it. Picture a mother in Florence, 1348. In our history, she watches her husband, children, and neighbors succumb one by one. She buries them in shallow graves, alone, wondering if God has cursed her. In the AI timeline, the machine detects fever in her district. A quarantine order is given. Guards enforce separation. Her family survives, but she is never allowed to leave her street again. Yes, she lives, but she lives in a prison of survival, watched and commanded by an invisible force. Now imagine a young monk in Paris. In our history, he writes chronicles of the plague, despairing at the collapse of faith. In the AI timeline, the church declares the machine a divine miracle. He preaches obedience, not reflection. He becomes part of the machinery that keeps humanity under control. Which version of history is more human? The one drenched in suffering, or the one stripped of freedom? This isn't just a medieval thought experiment. It's a mirror to our present moment. During the COVID-19 pandemic, AI models already predicted viral spread, advised quarantines, and guided vaccine distribution. Governments debated privacy, surveillance, and freedom, just as medieval Europe might have if given the same choice. China's health code apps decided who could leave their homes. AI systems tracked outbreaks by scanning cell phone data. Social media algorithms fueled misinformation alongside prevention. We are living in the echoes of that alternate history. So ask yourself, if AI appeared in the 14th century, is it really that different from what we face now? Maybe the bigger question isn't whether AI could have controlled the Black Death, but whether we have ever truly controlled AI. Let's crystallize the two paths of this alternate history. The plague ends quickly. Europe stabilizes, technology accelerates. Humanity becomes centuries more advanced. By today, perhaps AI doesn't feel new. It's been our companion since the Middle Ages. Survival, but at the price of total obedience. Rulers weaponize AI against their people. The Renaissance never blossoms into freedom. It's crushed under digital feudalism. By today, perhaps we are not debating AI ethics because AI has always ruled us. Which would you choose? A faster, stronger humanity? Or a freer, but riskier humanity? Now imagine one last possibility. What if the AI didn't just save Europe? What if it spread beyond it? What if this machine guided the Ottoman Empire, the Mongols, or Ming China? What if it reshaped trade routes, deciding which nations rise and which fall? What if the AI saw humans as inefficient carriers of disease and recommended thinning the herd itself? The Black Death would not just change Europe. It would become the moment humanity lost control of its destiny. So, what if AI had controlled the Black Death? Would we live in a world far more advanced, free from centuries of suffering? Or would humanity have been enslaved long before it learned the meaning of freedom? Tell me, would you accept salvation from the plague, even if it meant surrendering your humanity to a machine? Now imagine one last possibility. Would AI have saved more lives than it destroyed? Would medieval rulers use AI for the people or against them? Could Europe have advanced centuries ahead of time? Would democracy ever exist if AI enforced order early on? Would the Renaissance even happen or be prevented? Is suffering sometimes necessary for growth? If AI faced the Black Death today, would we handle it any differently? History is a story of choices, sometimes brutal, sometimes miraculous. But in every age, we face the same haunting question. If survival comes at the cost of freedom, is it truly survival at all?